Our chalice this morning comes from Elisa Doge, the ember of hope and love set ablaze. What if sometimes it's not about a light in the darkness? What if sometimes it's about sparking potential into possibility and possibility into existence? What if sometimes the flame that burns in the chalice of our faith is nothing less than the ember of hope and nothing more than love set ablaze? What if sometimes all we need to do is follow this flame, one among scores, hundreds, thousands of steadily flickering flames across the land and among so many peoples, on the way to justice and into the land of peace? What if we dare to kindle that chalice? Oops.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Rubenstein. I'm your chair of the Board of Trustees at RUUC. And I'm here this morning to introduce our monthly theme in February of justice and equity. Many of you will remember that a few years ago, I think it was the beginning of the pandemic, we hosted a virtual program by the Free Minds Book Club and Workshop. That's a nonprofit organization locally here in Washington, D.C. It's an incredible organization. They use transformative tools, books, writing, teaching literacy, and peace building to create community support for incarcerated and previously incarcerated young men, and young women, to help them achieve their educational, career, and life goals, to write new chapters in their lives, and become powerful voices for change. They actually employ previously incarcerated young men and women to share the messages of anti-racism and to educate people about over-incarceration. They've published several books of poetry written by members during their incarceration. The most recent book is called When You Hear Me, You Hear Us, Voices on Youth Incarceration. I'm going to read two poems from this book because they really speak to me about equity and justice. These are voices that are seldom heard and are very important to listen to carefully and deeply. The first one is called America the Beautiful by Alex. America, today is another glorious day. The cloudless skies shine bright up there, helping us feel that all will be right for one more night as the sun keeps storms away. America, one of your children went to jail today, forced to get by without a job, living hungry with no food to feed his boys, given into doing the only thing he knows, no matter what it costs. America, a woman screamed today, claiming a man was threatening her way, though the only evidence she had was the color of his skin and the things she planned to say. America, I'm saying this today because I know you're America the Beautiful, from sea to shining sea, land of the free and home of the brave, where we hold truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that we are one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So America, please tell me, what do you have to say? The second poem was written by Emmanuel in 2017. It's still very relevant today. Dear America by Emmanuel. I'm writing you today, a lost voice from prison, lost and confused about the country we live in and the people that's in it. How do you claim to be united when there's so much division? So much division based on religion, based on our culture, our sex, and our pigment. Oh, America, how could you be so selfish and so ignorant to allow a man of this nature guide us with ignorance on a path to destruction? I pray for deliverance, for the colored, for the poor, for the Muslim and immigrant. Oh, America, America, you've shown your colors. How many years in your country will my people suffer? I shed tears for my brothers, my sisters, and my mothers. The words that you utter have exploited your cover. You, America, have proven that racism still exists. The leaders of your nation consist of white supremacists. There are those who follow them and those who are against. A war within your people, your country's at risk. I fear for you, America, but I pray that I am wrong. Sincerely yours truly, Emmanuel.
As we gather this month, called and charged with words about what it means to live with a calling toward justice and equity, we also gather with a deep yearning for that love, that hope, that peace, which will rise up in us and in the world to guide us forward in the labor and the work, the love and the hope that lies ahead. Our opening hymn is a song of that yearning. There is more love. Please rise in body or in spirit. Our teen choir is gracious enough to be leading us through it.
This morning, Reverend Nancy is talking some about liminal space. And I've been thinking about what that might mean to the younger people in this room. Liminal space is sort of an in-between transitional time. For kids, it could be something like summer, where you've finished a school with your teacher and you have no idea who next year's teacher is going to be. It could mean moving to a new school, like going from elementary to middle school to high school. You don't know what to expect. It could mean moving to a new house. You know where you've been, you know what school, what house, but you don't really know what the new thing's going to be like. For young adults, it could be graduating from college or changing jobs. There's so many examples. It can be exciting, and it can be terrifying, too. So I heard this story, and I thought it was a good way to explain liminal space. This is The Parable of the Trapeze by Danan Perry, and the film clip we're going to watch while I talk is from the 1956 movie Trapeze. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to the trapeze bar, swinging along for a few moments. I'm hurling across space between the trapeze bars. Mostly I spend my time hanging on for dear life to the trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along a certain steady rate of swing, and I have a feeling I'm in control. I know most of the right questions, and even some of the right answers, but once in a while, as I'm merrily or not so merrily swinging along, I look ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar looking at me. It's empty, and I know that this new bar has my name on it. It's my next step. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on the present, well-known bar to move to the new one. Each time it happens, I hope that I won't have to grab this new bar, but I know that I must totally release my grasp on the old bar, and for some moment in time, I must hurl across space before I can grab the new bar. Each time I do this, I'm filled with terror. It doesn't matter if all my previous hurdles I've made it. Each time I am afraid I will miss. But I do it anyway. I must. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call faith. No guarantees, no net, no insurance, but we do it anyway because hanging onto that old bar is no longer an option. And so, for what seems like an eternity, but actually lasts just a microsecond, I soar across the void. It's called a transition. I have come to believe that this is the only place that real change happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening. Hurling through that void, we learn to fly. She makes it. Spoiler alert, she makes it. Just my poor video editing skills. So now, at this point, I invite children, youth, and their teachers to go to their religious education classes.
We gather individually and collectively poised between so many things, perhaps terrifyingly so, perhaps bravely so, we gather holding the joys and the sorrows, the laughter and the tears that constitute an actual life with all of its complexities. And while I want to encourage you at any time throughout the service to light a candle for what lives in the silent sanctuary of your own hearts, there are a few joys and concerns I want to lift up to the whole congregation today. Firstly, the incredible weight and the great hope of these times that we live in, times of war, times of escalation, times when small scraps of peace intercede in the midst of the pain, for those laboring to make a way forward and for all of us laboring to make meaning in the midst of it all. Today also we lift our hearts up to Marjorie Newman, who's at Sibley Hospital at the ICU. Marjorie's being well tended after a fall and hopefully will be able to move out of intensive care this week. We're also thinking of Hank Beasley and Maureen, who in addition to everything else is also such a faithful, amazing, wise member of our board. Hank is receiving nursing care at Maplewood, which is the retirement community he and Maureen live in. And they're considering additional support systems for his ongoing care. Cards would be appreciated at this time to both Hank and Maureen at Maplewood. Also, a memorial service for just one of the kindest, warmest river roaders we ever had, Lynn Starbird, will happen at Riderwood Village in the chapel there on Saturday, February 17th at 2 o'clock. His family have all been there with him through his illness and have been with him through so much. His amazing wife, Anne, is just an inspiration to us all and a longtime member of our choir. We also will honor the life of Carol Middlebrook, a vivacious, vibrant, unstoppable force of nature that she was. Her service will be here at River Road later on in the spring. We have currently scheduled to honor her on May 4th. For this and so much else, we make a space in our hearts.
Rumi shares that out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there, he says. And I invite you to meet me here in this time of stillness and contemplation, this time of holding and releasing, of grasping and letting go. Spirit of life, we come from all the corners of our lives, gathered in like a tapestry, in some places tattered and worn, and in others tightly woven and holding strong. All of it beautiful, all of it filled with grace and joy and sorrow, and all of it becoming, yet again, something transformed by each of us, by all the parts of each of us. We lift our hearts along with those among us in the wake of illness and loss, those among us adapting to a new normal, a new narrative, a new way of having to be and live in this world, those who are waiting for news, for results, for new puzzle pieces, those who are waiting for relief. And as we lift our hearts, we reach also towards peace. Even if it feels like we're reaching in the dark, even if it feels that we cannot grasp anything, we reach for peace still. And as we reach towards peace, we also reach toward one another. Like so many before us have done, we reach toward each other for that spirit of life. It's the spirit of our lives, dwelling together. The Spirit dwells in the reaching together. Beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. Let us meet there on this day and so many of the days to come. Let us meet there in our joy and in our sorrow and our pain and in the things that lift us up out. Let us dwell in that field and dwell in the peace that we create. And let us behold the beauty and the pain, the mystery and the wonder of it all. May it always be so. Blessed be. Generosity is a spiritual practice, and in this congregation we get so many opportunities to engage in that practice with one another. Generosity builds so much of our lives in this congregation and what we do beyond this congregation. And today we have yet another opportunity to practice that generosity. Of course, as always, there are many ways to give. You can give online, going directly to the website. You can text to give at 73256. And you can also give right here in this space as the baskets pass. Whether this is your first time here or your 500th time here, this is a place created by each one of us, supported by our generosity, and built by our love. As the choir comes up and as the music plays, you're welcome to give freely as you're willing and able.
Just this Monday, on Twitter or X or whatever it is that we're calling that now, Elmo asked a question. You know Elmo, right? The furry red monster. Elmo thought that it might be a good idea, in the midst of every single thing everybody is going through in this world, just to see what's up with all of us. And so all 457,000 of Elmo's followers saw this message flash across their screens early this week. Elmo is just checking in. How is everybody doing? Asks Elmo. And let me tell you, Elmo found out real quick exactly how we all are doing. The Twitter feed of the Sesame Workshop immediately turned into the most poetic, most heartbreaking display of our collective suffering and anxiety that I have seen in a very, very long time. Thousands upon thousands of responses flowed in moment by moment toward Elmo's gentle question, some joking, some the furthest thing from it, each an artifact of what it feels like to live in this particular moment in time together. All the anxieties unrolled on that screen. The 2024 election and what it will bring, the astonishing suffering of unfettered war, jobs contracting into gigs and an economy with less benefits, institutions collapsing, the rising risk of wildfires. It was all there on the Twitter feed of the Sesame Workshop in response to Elmo's seemingly innocuous question. Elmo, I am depressed and broke, one person wrote, speaking for a generation of young people struggling to get a handle on the economic stability of those who went before. Another respondent, the poet Hanif Abdurraqib, channeled some part of all of us when he wrote, Elmo, each day the abyss we stare into grows a unique horror, one that was previously unfathomable in nature. Our inevitable doom, which once accelerated in years or months now accelerates in hours, even minutes. However, I did have a very good grapefruit earlier. Thank you for asking. Which is all to say, we are not all right. Generally speaking, there is in this nation and in this world, even in this room, right here, a sort of free-floating collective anxiety that casts a filter over these days we cannot remove. It catches us sometimes when we least expect it. It is specific to our own personal circumstances, but somehow deeply and always transcendent of them. It is in the air. It is all around us. We are not okay. And all Elmo had to do to find out was ask. As the theologian Kate Bowler put it this week, there is a certain anxious fragility in these times when the volume is turned up extra high on embedded fear. Which is to say that fear is nothing new. We have not just invented it. We have not found it in this generation, nor did any generation before invent embedded fear. It is only to say that somehow the adjustments on that volume knob have been cranked way up. And I have spent a good deal of time thinking in recent months about that volume knob on the free-floating anxiety among us and in this world, wondering what or who has the power to turn it up or down, to influence the dimensions of our embedded fear, and thus perhaps influence our choices in this world. And while I do not have an answer, I want to be clear that I released myself from the responsibility of having answers when I started to prepare this sermon. I do at least have a partial working theory that has everything to do with the stories we tell ourselves and the meaning that we make from those stories. Seth Goldenberg is one of these guys who thinks of himself as a disruptor. a change agent and all that, the kind of social entrepreneur that my somewhat old-fashioned self is hardwired to be suspicious of. You see, when people think of themselves as cultural disruptors, I automatically imagine they are trying to sell me something I would probably do better not to buy. But this guy, Seth Goldenberg, he writes about radical curiosity as an engine for our collective well-being, and he has won me over lately, in spite of myself. In his book on radical curiosity, Goldenberg describes these times so full of free-floating anxiety, these times in which we live, as a space between narratives, a middle place in which the stories we have told ourselves are falling apart, and the stories that will unite us around some new vision, for better or indeed for worse, have not yet fully taken hold. I often preach that human beings are storytelling creatures. We sort our experience into meaning by giving narrative structure to our lives, to the world. Religious experience is shaped by the stories we tell. And in the everyday scope of our lives, our narratives tell us what it is we are actually living through. Individually and collectively, stories are the sorting mechanism of the human mind. And so we grab a hold of them like life buoys tossed out into choppy waters, clinging desperately lest we drown in a sea of uncertain dimension and depth. Now, nobody tells just one story at a time, not really. Stories are complex things. There are many elements to the stories we tell, the narratives we hold on to for dear life, national ones, institutional ones, individual ones. The point, as it applies to the free-floating anxiety that Elmo stumbled into this week, is that right now, we are living between narratives on any number of dimensions in our lives. And that experience of living between narratives, of losing the plot of our own lives, if you will, that experience is a profoundly, inherently stressful thing. The poets, as Beth alluded to, they call this liminal space, a space between worlds, when one reality is gone and another has yet to fully present itself. And let me tell you, I hate liminal space. Pretty much nobody, except maybe some saint or sage that lives at the top of a mountain and has not taught me how yet, pretty much nobody is at home in liminal space. In fact, we will do almost anything we can do to story ourselves back to solid ground again. Goldenberg notes that there are received stories that we get, that we have been told or have been telling for some time. And those received stories are falling away right now faster than we can collectively build new ones. He calls these received stories legacy narratives, and notes that, quote, we bounce through a world filled with signals from legacy narratives that are camouflaged and woven into the environment. Once established, letting go of a legacy narrative, a story I tell myself about who I am or what it is I'm doing or what we collectively are doing, letting go of a legacy narrative can be deeply painful. It is not fun when what we thought we knew slips out from under us. And yet it happens all the time. And in this country, never more so, perhaps, than in the span of the last decade or so. Legacy narratives falling away. America the Beautiful, from sea to shining sea. Lisa reminded us of how deeply interwoven that legacy narrative is, even to those who have been cast away, pushed out from the blessings of that beautiful land. I kid you not, grew up singing Lee Greenwood's "Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free." I'm not the only one, right? Somebody else is a little bit country. No, just, yeah. My little Midwestern lungs shouted that out when I was 8 years old because it was true. I was proud to be an American. I was full of gratitude for this place and the narrative of its almost miraculous role as protector of the liberal democracies of this world. And the story, I believed that there was a pathway to the middle class for anybody, including me, who would work for it. It is a story that slipped away a long time ago for some. It is a story clung to like a life raft in choppy waters by others. There are plenty of legacy narratives at work all around us, rising and falling away as we move through our lives in our collective days, sometimes to our great grieving and our profound anxiety. Dolly Parton and Sharon Sandberg, working 9 to 5, told us maybe we really could have it all. Climate change could be addressed primarily by the personal and individual choices we made at the recycling bin. You remember that story? Racism was solved the moment Barack and Michelle stepped before the cheering crowds in Millennium Park. Unitarian Universalism existed because some of us were just too smart for the more traditional religions we left behind. Gay marriage meant that the struggle for queer equality was pretty much covered, and Shirley Chisholm and Gloria Steinem teamed up a long time ago to make sure that the women's movement was by, for, and about women, and a binary understanding of gender that carried a kind of purity we needed to get us through until we couldn't buy that story anymore. When legacy narratives such as these are falling away or dying, or being finally perceived as the false or limited depictions of realities they always were, we lose our sorting mechanisms for our lives. This is what Goldenberg describes as a cultural interregnum. Isn't that a wonderful phrase? A cultural interregnum, a space between the stories, the proverbial and incredibly sucky liminal space in which the world cannot be easily sorted and meaning is not ready-made for us. It is the space between the narratives, to put it in even smarter words. Tune me out if you need to. It is a transition between fundamentally different sets of values, catalyzing an evolution in our shared frameworks for human experience, and it is hard. As they fall away, these received legacy narratives are pushed along by what sociologists call challenger narratives. Stories that upend and dislodge, stories that push the culture, that push our imaginations, that make us work to live in a different way, or to think that it could ever be possible to live in a different way. Think of challenger narratives as trial runs for a new reality, a beta test for a new understanding of who we are. Challenger narratives do not carry the comfort of an old pair of jeans. You cannot slip into them. You have to work to construct them, to adjust them as you go. Challenger narratives take work, and work is hard, and it leaves us anxious, and the whole thing buzzes with tension. The comfy old stories, which were only comfy for some, are gone. The new stories we're trying to tell haven't been broken in yet. The challenger narratives, it must be said, are quite a mixed bag these days. A mixed bag full of stories that just might kill and stories that just might create hope, and we cannot often sort them out from one another. The discourse is all too much. We have lost the plot. We tell Elmo that we cannot perceive which end is up anymore. We are churning in the way that nobody ever asked to churn. It just so happens that at this time in history, we are together in the midst of innumerable clashes of legacy and challenger narratives on many fronts. Name the topic, the desperately important subject matter on which lives depend, and I bet you can define the ways in which old stories are confronting new ones right now. At the very least, at this very moment in this country, we are together encountering both legacy and challenger narratives about gender, sexuality, work, race, climate, democracy, warfare, and religion. Legacy and challenger narratives are confronting one another about what it means to even be a country, confronting one another about morality, about identity, and institutions and people are crumbling over the weight of all this necessary reinvention. It is important to say, right here, right now, that inevitably some of the challenger narratives that arise in these liminal times are just a repackaging of older stories, some of which many people in this room worked very hard to stop telling a generation ago for very good reasons. Some of these challenger narratives arise in times of cultural interregnum, in between times, because those are the times when people and cultures are most vulnerable. Some challenger narratives take advantage of the disequilibrium to establish themselves repeatedly in the course of history. And some of those narratives can kill. Right now, this minute, we are together living through a global resurgence of the age-old story of ethno-nationalism on a political scale greater than anything we've seen since the end of World War II. It is a repackaged old idea, this one, that states and nations and political structures are made for one kind of people, justifying the exclusion or oppression of anyone else. In this age, it is a challenger narrative that has risen up like an opportunistic infection to answer the legacy narrative of 20th century bureaucratic internationalism and the whole guiding concept of diverse democracy. In this country specifically, it is not generalized ethno-nationalism we contend with in this opportunistic infection. It is white nationalism. The story of it is woven into and among the imaginative frameworks of our national politics more overtly right now than it has ever been since the Reconstruction era. Like a life buoy, which powerful people cavalierly tossed out into the choppy seas of these days. The story of American white nationalism, the story of global ethno-nationalism, it is giving structure to our collective life, which in this case is a very scary, scary thing indeed. I need to pause a moment, in part so I don't cry, and talk about story itself, or words and their power. I need to challenge the notion that any story at all is just a story. After all, it is relatively common these days for people in power to claim that they're just talking, and that talking isn't really a substantial thing, that telling a story, weaving a narrative, isn't as impactful as actually doing a thing. It's just a joke, you know? Locker room talk. We didn't do anything really, just talking, just telling the tale. But the fact is that almost every complex thing we do in this whole world has its origins in something that we say. We do what we do because we have spoken it into possibility. In northern Alaska, the Nunavut people describe the way in which the whole world is storied into being. And they are careful even now with the stories that they tell, lest those stories break free of their bonds of speech and become new realities we cannot control. Nunavut scholar Tia Tidwell writes of the Western philosophical idea of speech acts, the tangible responses to things that we say, which are in fact the substance of every meaningful interaction we have. A speech act is the direct result of a word. It is what we do as a result of what we say. It goes like this. Hey, Cliff! You see? Cause, effect, speech, and act. No word that we say is just a word. There is no such thing as locker room talk with no consequences because we speak ourselves into the interactions we have in this world. We story our way into new worlds. It is a power not to be trifled with. and it means there is work to do. I sometimes wonder if particularly the Christian imperialists in this country just have a way, way better story than we do. And they are not at all ashamed to tell it. And in telling it, they bring it into being, they birth it to reality like a magic spell that we can only counteract with other magic spells through telling our stories about being in community, about being a part of something larger than ourselves, about the meaning of this nation and the place that every person has within it. This is what we do in community, really. Not just here, but in all the pockets of community, all the frameworks for institutional and civic life that you are in service to. As Gwendolyn Brooks put it, we are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. We are each other's storytellers, the ones who frame the new narratives. And in this way, it is our business to keep telling and retelling stories that give life during anxious times now more than ever. The good news is that we, all of us, may well feel lost, but we are just in the middle. And we find our way out by telling new tales of what is possible. There is a shared narrative, not just in this place, but in the world, that the arc of the universe bends to the degree that we are willing to bend it. Because we are trying to be accountable to and gentle with one another so we can be brave and honest in a world full of opportunistic stories of desolation. We are practicing the art of storying a new world into being right now. That's all Sunday morning ever really is. It's a way of storying a new reality, of saying out loud what we need so deeply to be true. Speech forming acts, acts shaping speech, narratives building as the received traditions fall away, creating a story that is more survivable because we are willing to put up with one another long enough to keep telling it. And maybe that's what Elmo was doing too this week on Twitter, with that one simple question, shaking loose the stories of the people suffering so that in turn they could begin to tell stories of hope. Practicing the dissolution of every single thing that came before so that what may be can rise up. Maybe just storying a new reality in which it actually matters how we're all doing, how we attend to each other. Maybe storying a new reality that it matters for us to ask how each other are doing. After receiving 9,000 responses in 24 hours, Elmo wrote again on Tuesday, posting, "Wow, Elmo is glad he asked." Elmo learned, he said, it is important to ask a friend how they are doing, and so it is. The act of asking is a story in and of itself. The act of telling brings a new reality. And though we may feel lost, we are, all of us, only in the middle of the story that we must figure out how to tell together. you, Schwai. Everything we do together arises because we make it so together, and there are so many people to thank for today's service, for the ways in which we tell our stories. First of all, Lisa Rubenstein, thank you. Being board chair is no joke. And for that leadership and for grounding us in this theme that we will tackle in different ways this month. For our tech team, we got Danny, Ajay, Marsha, and Dave being the backup dancer up there this week. Teen choir, and so many others, thank you. You know that there are so many ways to get connected in community. Sunday, this time when we tell the stories, is just one part of it. There are ways to connect and to serve and to celebrate at River Road, and you can find out more in the e-weekly. That's your best source of information, but there are a few things I can share with you. Firstly, that check the social justice section of the e-weekly for events happening this month. We have a whole lot afoot, from some lobby day information for the Youth for Social Justice in Annapolis to our interfaith broad-based organizing work with Action in Montgomery. It is rich and connecting and sometimes even really fun work that we do together with these key organizations. So please check so that you can be a part of those conversations. Also, our winter cabaret is coming up in not long, 3 weeks? I don't know. It's happening, people. It's happening in February. And we hope you were saving the date to attend, which I do not have on my script, and you should check the e-weekly. Yes, thank you, Lisa. The 24th, and thinking about what delicious food you're going to bring and what amazing talents you're going to share, because it's going to be amazing. Also, the retreat committee. We're starting to think about and plan for our retreat, which will happen in the spring, which is such a fun connecting time for all of us. Retreat committee is going to have a table in the fellowship hall, which is right through those doors and across the bridge in the coffee hour this week. Just know that April 27th through 28th at Seneca Creek State Park here in Montgomery County is where it's all going to happen. You can find out more today. And finally, our River Road Board of Trustees is beginning a process of identifying 11 folks who will serve as official delegates from our congregation at the upcoming Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. We'd like you to consider participating in that important annual event that helps connect our community and guide it forward as a part of the Unitarian Universalist movement we are connected to. If you're selected as one of those 11 folks, you'll get some guidance and help as you prepare to serve in that way. General Assembly will be June 20th to 23rd, and it is fully virtual. So you don't even have to go to wherever city it randomly is every year. You can just do it from here, and you can place yourself on that list of candidates by emailing our leadership and nominations committee. The deadline for self-nomination is apparently Wednesday, February 28th. And Amanda and I as ministers are automatically delegates, so we don't even have to nominate ourselves. So whatever. In the midst of so much, as we prepare to take this light we have kindled out into the waiting world, may the truths that make us free, the love that casts out fear, and the hope that never dies guide us and those we love and those we do not love forward together till the day spring breaks and the shadows flee away. Amen.